Sumerian tablets are probably one of the oldest form of a written record that we have.
What we're looking at here is a Sumerian tablet that actually shows the tree of life, flanked by divine beings. You can see here the Anunnaki on each side.
We know now that Sumerian literature consists primarily of epics, myths, hymns, laments, and so-called wisdom literature, which consists of proverbs, fables, and essays of various sorts.
Researchers fed Grok AI a pile of broken Sumerian tablets that no one had fully read in over 100 years. Fragments so shattered most scholars had quietly given up on them decades ago. They expected cleaner translations. According to the story now spreading, what came back instead was something nobody was ready for.
They actually had necklaces with astronomical references, a moon, a star, various symbols.
Lines that, once connected, seemed to describe how humanity was really made, and by whom. Some are calling it the greatest breakthrough in decoding the ancient world. Others are insisting these tablets were never meant to be read again. So, what did Grok surface that suddenly has everyone arguing? The forgotten tablets. So, let me tell you how this supposedly starts, because the way the story gets told, it doesn't start with a headline. It starts quiet. It's late, and a philologist, call her Mara, someone who has spent the better part of 20 years squinting at this exact script, is alone in a back office of a university collection, surrounded by trays of broken clay. And these are real things, you have to understand that part. The Sumerians of Mesopotamia were pressing records into wet clay thousands of years ago, long before most of the world had any writing at all.
So it's full of information, even though it's a bit damaged. But the other side is the remarkable thing. Firstly, there's some lines of cuneiform ruled across very firmly at the top.
And archaeologists pulled thousands of these tablets out of ruined cities like Eridu and Nippur. Most of them are wrecked, half a line here, a missing corner there. Whole passages crumbled down to dust. And here's the part that matters. For more than a century, the people who actually study this stuff could only ever see fragments. One scholar had one piece. Someone on another continent had a different one. Nobody held the whole picture, because the picture was scattered across museum drawers and storage rooms all over the world. Some of it mislabeled, some of it written off as too minor to bother with. The script itself, cuneiform, is one of the oldest writing systems on Earth, and it fights you the entire way. The same symbol can mean 3 different things depending on where it sits. Half the words have no clean match in any language anyone speaks today. People gave whole careers to this, and still only ever saw corners of it. So that night, as the story goes, she does the thing nobody had really tried at scale. She feeds the broken pieces into Grok, not to translate exactly, but to see if it can hold thousands of fragments in mind at once and notice what a human brain simply cannot, which is what lines up with what. Because that's the trick of it. The model isn't just swapping one language for another. It's reading pattern, predicting the symbols that crumbled off the edges, and quietly cross-referencing Sumerian against Akkadian, against Babylonian, all at the same time, the way no single human ever could in one lifetime. And it starts predicting. It fills in a missing symbol on a shattered edge, a guess at a character that rotted away centuries ago. Then it does something stranger. It reaches across the whole scattered mess and links the fragment in front of her to another one cataloged 100 years earlier in a completely different collection. 2 pieces nobody on Earth had ever thought to set side by side.
We have 9 epic tales, so that we can now speak of a Sumerian heroic age of about 2500 or even earlier BC.
And they fit. The sentence completes. The break heals. A line that had been 2 dead halves on 2 different shelves becomes one sentence again. And it says something nobody had ever read. Now stay with me, because I have to be straight with you about what this is. None of this is confirmed. The whole thing is a claim, the kind that spreads fast and gets messy on the way. But according to the way it's told, Mara just sat there and stopped breathing, staring at a line that had been snapped in half for 1,000 years and was suddenly whole in front of her. That was the moment everything tilted. And the reason this story refuses to die is what supposedly came pouring out next. When AI connected them. Here's what you have to understand about how we've always told the human origin story. One creation, one beginning. Doesn't matter if you grew up with religion or myth, the shape is the same. Humans show up once, fully formed, and the story moves on from there. According to this reading of the tablets, that is not what the clay says, not even close. Because when the fragments got connected, the text started using different words for humans. On its own, that's nothing. Old languages repeat themselves and use 10 words for one thing, but the same odd terms kept landing in the same kinds of places, over and over, across tablets, that otherwise had nothing to do with each other. Phrases that come out as something close to working life, references to low-light clay, one line that gets read as those who do not multiply. For generations, scholars shrugged these off as poetry, as flourish. The claim now is that once you see them stacked together, in pattern, they stop reading like poetry at all. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, so stay with me.
They created man according to the Sumerian text. They created Adam and Eve.
Some researchers argue these aren't metaphors. They argue they describe early human groups built for a purpose, made to work, not meant to settle, not meant to last, used more like a temporary crew than a species, brought in for a job and not much else. And it gets worse, because some of these groups just disappear from the record entirely, as if a version had failed and gotten swapped out for a better one. Under this reading, we weren't created in a single clean moment. We were iterated, drafts, revisions, a final cut, with everything that didn't make it left scattered in the offcuts. There is no firm proof for any of this, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but it leaves you holding a question you can't really unask. If somebody was making different kinds of humans on purpose, then why? And who decided which ones got to stay, and which ones got quietly written out of the story before it even started? Quick thing, and then I'll take you right back into it. If a question like that just lit something up in the back of your skull, this is the exact channel built for that itch, because we chase these threads all the way down to the bottom where the air gets thin. Subscribe so the next piece of this finds you the second it drops. Okay, back to the clay. Lulu and Sajiga. Once you let in the idea of categories, the tablets start reading very differently, and two words sit right at the center of it: Lulu and Sagiga. For a long time, both got treated as plain, generic words for people. But according to this reading, when you line up every place they appear, they split apart from each other. Lulu tends to land on ordinary humans. Sagiga was translated years ago by some scholars as the black-headed people. And here's the part that gets me. It keeps showing up right next to specific jobs. People described as obedient, hardworking, finishing their tasks and never once asking why. There's one line in particular that stops people cold. People whose eyes did not question. Maybe that's symbolic, a turn of phrase. Or maybe, some researchers argue, it's describing exactly what it sounds like. A group shaped to comply, to do the work and never push back against the order around them. And from there, the roles fan out. Some groups tied to labor and construction, some to religious duty, some to administration and records. A few passages even seem to pin different physical traits to different groups. People marked by the sun, lighter-skinned individuals, people who lived on harsh land. Whether any of that was literal or pure symbol, nobody can honestly say. But the pattern that really stacks up, the one you need to hold on to, is about knowledge and about who was allowed to have any. Some texts reach for terms like the clay of strength, the heavy laborers, tied by some interpretations to mining and brutal physical work, the ones used to drag resources out of the ground and raise enormous structures. Then there's the blood of radiance, the ones kept near knowledge and ritual. The priests and scribes and watchers of the stars, handed more information and more privilege than anyone else. And the shadow people, kept to the animals and the ordinary tasks, walled off from certain places and certain knowledge completely. Stay with me here, because this thread runs straight through everything that comes after. Some groups were taught writing and the movements of the sky. Others were locked to their labor and nothing more, ever. Knowledge wasn't shared in this world. It was assigned. And the moment you see that, it stops looking like a culture and starts looking like a system someone designed. Inside Eden. Which brings us to a name you already know, except not in the way you know it: Eden, or Eden. You hear that word and your brain hands you a garden, a paradise, snakes and apples. According to these texts, it reads more like a facility, a controlled working zone, sitting between two rivers, which is exactly why some researchers tie it straight to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia. And here's the part that gets me. Several texts describe Eden as a place where new human groups were prepared and then tested. You make a group, you run the trial. Pass, and you earn a name and a role and a future. Fail, and the language turns genuinely dark. People sent into the rivers or carried off by them. Groups driven toward the mountains who then simply vanish from the record. No explanation, just gone. Maybe all of that is symbolic, and I have to keep saying that because it's true. But the AI supposedly flagged those same grim beats repeating across separate, unconnected tablets, and that's where the human prototype theory comes from. The idea that what we're actually reading is a log, a record of versions, some that worked, some that didn't, some that got quietly erased. No solid proof for any of it. But by the end, Eden stops sounding like somewhere people lived. It starts sounding like somewhere people were made and unmade. Enki's upgrade. And there was a flaw in the early versions, a big one. You have to understand this because everything hinges on it. According to this reading, those first humans could work, but they could not reproduce. Every new group had to be built again from scratch. Numbers drop too low, you go make more. The whole arrangement was slow and exhausting to keep running, and some texts hint the limit wasn't an accident, that it was deliberate, a control mechanism. Keep the power to make people locked in the hands of whoever's in charge, and you keep absolutely everyone in line beneath them. But the older models stop being enough. The tablets don't spell out exactly why, only that something more capable was needed, something smarter and more durable. And this is where a name steps forward out of the dark: Enki. In Sumerian tradition, the figure tied to wisdom and knowledge, the clever one. According to some interpretations, Enki decided to change humans at the root. People reach for the phrase genetic modification when they describe it, even though no such words exist anywhere in the clay. What the texts actually describe is an upgrade, beings who could learn, adapt, sustain themselves. And the enormous one, the line that changes everything. They could now reproduce. No more rebuilding from zero. No more remaking a workforce every time it thinned out. For the first time, humans could grow on their own. And if that reading holds, that is the hinge the entire story turns on. We stopped being a workforce. We started becoming a species. And one figure walks straight out of that change with a name. Adapa awakens. His name was Adapa. In the texts, he is not ordinary, not even a little. He's described as the finest of humans, carrying a kind of wisdom the others around him simply did not have. He could think and decide and speak and lead. A lot of people read him as the first upgraded human, the prototype that finally worked the way it was supposed to. Enki gave him an understanding that ordinary people never got anywhere near. But there's a cruel limit built into him, and you can feel it. He was given knowledge and not freedom. He could understand almost anything put in front of him, and certain hard limits still stayed locked around him the whole time. Then comes the day it all turns on a single choice. Adapa gets summoned before Anu, the god of the heavens, and being called up into that court was treated as an enormous honor for any human alive. And there, food and drink tied to immortality gets set down in front of him. Take them, the stories say, and he lives forever. But Enki had warned him beforehand, dead clear. Refuse everything they offer you up there, no matter what happens. So he did. With eternal life sitting right there on the table within reach, Adapa obeyed his maker and pushed it away untouched. One decision, and according to the story, that's the one that nailed death to the entire human race, permanently, for everyone who came after. The door to forever was open, and he closed it on instruction. Knowledge and control. Now here's where it stops being a story about us and starts being a story about them. Because the tablets, once they're connected this way, suggest the gods did not actually agree on what we were supposed to become. And two names come up over and over, Enki and Enlil. Enki, you already met. He saw something in humans. Give them knowledge and they grow. They improve their world. They become more. He didn't want a permanent servant class shuffling around beneath him. Enlil read the exact opposite way. Order above absolutely everything, humans receiving only the precise amount of knowledge their work required, because too much freedom and too much understanding makes a thing hard to control. So he always favored the limits, and you can feel the entire conflict sitting right there in that gap. One of them wants us to rise, the other wants us boxed. Stay with me, because this is what ties straight back to those categories we just walked through. Several texts say certain groups were taught farming, others writing, others how to work metal, but never evenly, never to everyone. Some got more, some got nothing past the task they were assigned. Researchers call this controlled development. Progress allowed, sure, but only ever up to a line that somebody else had already drawn for you. And if that's right, then our early history was never just a story of growth. It was a quiet war over how much we'd be permitted to know. A war that was building, the whole time, toward one terrible decision: the Great Flood. And you can probably already feel where this goes, because part of you has heard it before. As we multiplied and learned and organized ourselves, real cities, spreading farmland, an actual society, the tension up at the top finally snapped. Enlil, the one obsessed with order and control, supposedly looked down at all the progress and did not see an achievement. He saw a thing slipping its leash, getting too big, too smart, too free. And this is the part that should put a chill in you, because you genuinely have heard it before. Many Sumerian tablets describe a massive flood meant to wipe the entire world clean. A reset, some researchers call it, an attempt to scrap the whole human project and start it over from nothing. In the story, Enlil makes the call. We get erased. But Enki was still on our side, even then. When he learned what was coming, he secretly warned one single human. The Sumerian records call this man Ziusudra. In the later Akkadian versions, the same figure shows up as Utnapishtim. And, yes, a lot of people believe this is the exact seed that later grew into the story of Noah. Build a great boat, Enki tells him. Save your family, save a group of people, save what life needs to keep going. Then the rain comes down, the rivers swallow the land whole, and, according to the texts, this was no accident of weather. It was a decision, made on purpose, meant to end us. But the warning held. A handful survived. The water finally pulled back, the old cities were gone under the mud, and everyone alive afterward traced straight back to the ones who made it through. We didn't vanish, but understand how close it was. We almost did. The lost technology. And here's where even people who love this story start to shift in their seats, because the next part does not sound like myth at all. According to some of the connected translations, and I want to be completely clear, this is the single most contested piece of the entire thing. The texts describe things that read like machines, craft that flew, wings of wood and metal, and then the detail that really unsettles people. They didn't ride on the wind. They were driven by some kind of fire or energy held inside them. A metal placed into a heat container, described in a way that sounds a lot like liquid metal, structures that read as tied to producing energy somehow. For years, all of it got quietly filed under poetry, under symbol. The claim now is that the same descriptions keep surfacing once the records finally sit together in one place. And then there's the light that burned the land. One passage says, a whole city was destroyed in a single day. Another describes mountains splitting and breaking open. Some people hear that and think energy weapons. Mainstream scholars hear it and think natural disaster, or pure symbolism. And there is no proof either way, none. But here's the part that gets me, and it's not the gadgets at all, it's who got to know about them. Because the knowledge, again, was not shared. Some learned metal, some learned writing and farming. Some were deliberately kept in the dark, generation after generation, never handed the thing that would have let them rise. In the ancient world, the claim goes, technology was never just a tool, it was a leash. The few who held it held everyone else, and the ones cut off from it stayed dependent forever, by design. And the people holding that leash were watching something the rest of us never even bothered to look at twice. Watching the sky. The sky. Stay with me, because this might genuinely be the strangest turn in the whole thing. The records suggest the Sumerians weren't only writing down their own time and their own kings. They were watching the heavens, constantly, almost obsessively. In Ur, and later in Babylon, sky watchers logged the stars and the planets and the eclipses for centuries on end, with no instruments worth the name, catching small changes overhead that they frankly had no business being able to catch. To them, the sky was not decoration. It read like a system of messages, a thing that was trying to tell them something. And in those records, one name keeps surfacing: Nibiru. Some interpretations call it a crossing planet, something on a long, slow orbit that swings back around roughly every 3,600 years. Mainstream science does not accept this, full stop. But honestly, it's not the orbit that unsettles people. It's the other names the tablet supposedly handed: the Destroyer, the Light Blocker. Now stop and put that next to everything we just walked through together: a flood, sent on purpose to reset humanity, a power that decides when the whole project starts over from scratch, and up there in those obsessive sky records, on a cycle that keeps coming back around, something these people called the Destroyer. So the real question was never whether Nibiru is a planet or a myth. The real question is whether these people were leaving us a warning on purpose. And if they were, then what exactly did Grok pull out of that broken clay that suddenly has the whole world arguing all over again? Myth or memory? So here we are, right back at the only question that actually matters. What did the AI really reveal? Did it dig up a buried secret? Or did it just connect a pile of things that have been sitting in plain sight in front of us the entire time? Because that's the honest part, and I'm not going to dress it up. The AI didn't invent anything. No new tablets, no new history written from nothing. The claim is only that it did the one thing no single human ever could, which is read thousands of broken pieces together at once, and notice the pattern hiding across all of them. For centuries, we studied these things one fragment at a time, each scholar gripping a corner of something none of them could ever see whole, connect every piece, and the scattered stories start looking like one enormous picture. And that is exactly where the fight lives. Some people say it's myth, plain and simple symbolic language about gods and groups and Nibiru, that was never meant to be read literally. Others argue it's memory, real knowledge that slowly hardened into myth across thousands of years, until we forgot it was ever real. And the questions do not go away quietly, no matter which side you land on. How did humans pick up agriculture so suddenly? How did writing appear so fast, almost out of nowhere? Why does the same flood story show up in civilization after civilization that never touched each other? Why are there these sharp turning points in our deep history that the experts still can't fully agree on? Gaps where something seems to have jumped instead of crawled? That's the fuel behind the purposeful creation theory. The idea that our development was never an accident, that there was a plan running underneath it. Plenty of people call that pure imagination and nothing more, and they might be right. And right beside it sits the control system theory, built on how relentlessly these texts circle back to knowledge handed to some and flatly denied to others. If it's more than myth, then it describes a world where not everyone was ever meant to play the same part, where the roles were written before the people were. So now it lands on you. Are these just ancient myths? Or is there something underneath them we still haven't understood? If clay this old really does describe humans built for different purposes, then are we still standing inside that old design today? Or did we finally break out of it somewhere along the way? So tell me what you actually believe. Do these tablets hide a real secret? Or are they nothing more than myth dressed in old language? Drop your answer in the comments because I read them. And if this story pulled you in, subscribe and stick around, because the next tablet we open might just change the picture all over again.